The level of dislike of gay men and the vehemence of the denial of any claim they might make for spiritual parity with their Christian brothers that Corpus Christi reveals is disheartening. Gay has never seemed less good. If a divinity does not belong to all people, if he is not created in our image as much as we are created in his, then he is less of a true divinity for all men to believe in than he is a particular religion's secular definition of what a divinity should be for the needs of its followers. Such a God is not a God at all because he is exclusive to his members. The purpose of the play is that we begin again the familiar dialogue with ourselves. Do I love my neighbor? Am I contributing to the society in which I operate, or nil? Do I in fact matter? Nothing more, nothing less. The play is more of a religious ritual than a play. A play teaches us a new insight into the human condition. A ritual is an action we perform over and over because we have to. Otherwise, we are in danger of forgetting the meaning of that ritual. In this case, that we must love one another or die. Look, remember, weep if you will, but learn. And don't let it happen again.
We felt the play spoke to a need in our society to open up our hearts, our minds, and ourselves to the deep-seated prejudice that exists in the world today. As a teacher, I see the way our youth are growing up with a limited and closed-off view of the world and people, spouting hate speech in the hallways at their peers and feeling justified. As an individual, I live with, experience, and witness hateful and cruel ideologies, words, and actions that serve to tear down and squash the kindness and generosity we should be striving to facilitate between each other. And that is why, to offer one small reason, I felt compelled to produce this piece of theater, because this phenomenon and situation is illustrated and addressed in the Laramie Project with heartbreaking candor. And we have to do that. We have to confront it and talk about it if we are ever to begin, as one character in the play says, the healing process. I hope that you can take away with you tonight a restored faith in society, an altered outlook on the world, or simply a new view of yourself and how you fit into the story.
The scenario in tonight's show: a school teacher trying, oftentimes unsuccessfully, to express and explain why she spends all of herself in a low-paying, low-respect, and physically demanding job as she does, has a great deal of resonance with me. But what I love most about this play is how applicable and timely it is for anyone of any nation, background, or belief system. We must constantly ask ourselves why we do what we do. What are we passionate about? What drives us? And what is worth our time? Skylight begs us to ask, are we contributing good to our society or not? My utmost thanks to my cast. I strive above all else to provide a positive and worthwhile acting experience. And even when I didn't hit the mark, you have made this process exciting, hilarious, and amazing, simply with your presence. As always, I'm not worthy.
Take Me Out taught me anew that our society has some major issues with homosexuality. Still. And I have begun to stop letting that annoy me so much and learn that the best way to deal with the situation is to illustrate the point. The point being, someone's sexuality doesn't encapsulate all of who they are. It doesn't affect their ability to do their job, to run a government, to raise a family, to fight a war, or to play a sport. That's why this play is captivating and important. It illustrates the point. Why do we put our athletes on a pedestal, treating them as something otherworldly? And why are we so vicious when those same athletes then do something that proves their mortality? Do we want to believe that there's something bigger than ourselves? Something that we can always aspire to be, and so their flaws scare us? And why are we so afraid of the differences between us? Can we only celebrate the difference between us that we understand and can explain? This play speaks to that fear in a new and relevant way that is exciting to see on stage.
I'm a sucker for dialogue plays, and this play capitalizes on it. Throughout the entire script, sprinkled in at regular intervals, are small nuggets of genius, little bits of insight that come together by the end to leave you completely satisfied and also totally wanting more, and with a handful of questions. This play speaks to the ability of everyone to make good, to right their past wrongs and make a better future. And it toys with issues both big and small at the same time. God, mistakes, forgiveness, disappointment, regret, and love. My hope is that this play will make you look at your world in a new way, that it will excite and thrill you at the possibility of theater, that you'll leave talking, filled with questions and opinions about the play and about our lives and how the two are connected. I believe very much in the power of theater to change things inside us, around us, and in our world.
I will admit that I too often assume I live in a world where everyone holds the same beliefs as I do. I tend to think that everyone is at the same tolerance level as I am. I like to delude myself into thinking that everyone shares the same appreciation for music, art, food, and culture as I do. And most often, I sometimes trick myself into thinking that everyone wants the same things as I do, for themselves, for their loved ones, and for the world. That includes where I stand on religion. I was raised going to church every Sunday. If my sister and I didn't want to go, it didn't matter. We got out of bed, we cleaned up, and we all went to church as a family. Sometimes the sermons kept my attention, and sometimes they put me to sleep. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that I actually had a choice as to whether I went to church, and even more shockingly, that not everyone wanted, needed, were forced, or even knew about going to church on Sundays. And thus began my education in the differences that separate us and draw us together. If my life experiences are anything like yours, you have found yourself and your beliefs about the afterlife, God, or a higher being put into question when juxtaposed with the stance of people you respect, admire, or love. You may have found yourself advocating, believing in, or living something that you weren't completely 100% sure of in your heart. You may have felt different, an outsider, or alone simply because of who you are or what you believe. Welcome to tonight's show. I think it'll have something to say to you.
About a year ago, I was having lunch with my grandparents when the topic of movie stars from the 50s and 60s came up, and they mentioned Rock Hudson. My grandmother, in the most sincere way, said, everyone suspected he was gay, but no one was allowed to talk about it. My grandpa nodded knowingly. Contrast this with our society today, where there are over 50 gay-straight alliances hosted by Michigan high schools. Brokeback Mountain was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture, and openly gay politicians are changing the entire face of the political landscape and the laws that govern our country. This season, we have been exploring what it means to be different, out of place, an outsider, and labeled for one reason or another. Tonight's play grapples with that issue more than ever. When I first read The Pride, I was struck by the deep, honest, intense ways that it challenges us as a society to ask ourselves just how far we've come in those 50 years, and even more importantly, where we will be 50 years from now in regard to gay and civil rights. Is it possible that in my grandparents' lifetime, we have gone from homosexuality being illegal to the optimistic glimmer that same-sex marriage may be approved? Just imagine where we could be in 2058. I hope that you'll leave this performance thinking about your own relationships and their authenticity, pondering the patterns each generation continues to repeat, and with the knowledge that, as one of the characters says, it'll be all right. The journey for the characters in this play, and ours as well, is to know ourselves and each other and the forces that drive us a little better.
This show is about a typical American family who has dreams like any other. To fall in love and have a family, to be successful in school and in their careers, to live in a nice house, and above all, to be happy. That seems like a pretty safe course to set your life on, right? I know that as I was growing up, it certainly was the aim. And my family would, slightly jokingly, but always with an air of pride and hope, say that we had a Leave It to Beaver family. Yet what I've learned as I've grown up and seen my family grow and change, as well as listening more to how all families work, I've come to realize why we can never be like that TV show. It's not real life. Real life is messy, unpredictable, mercurial, and certainly doesn't get wrapped up neatly at the end of 30-minute intervals. And, more to the point of this musical, in real life, people struggle to communicate effectively and often get overwhelmed with everything there is to juggle in one day. And that's the world we live in and are charged with navigating every day. Next to Normal gives voice to something we're all struggling to master: how to get through each day successfully, with kids, work, sports practice, bills, coworkers, body issues, deadlines, traffic, addictions, grief, the houses to maintain, and illness. This process was enjoyable beyond words and one that I didn't want to end. And I dedicate this show to my parents who, despite all of the things we have to maneuver in life, are still holding each other's hand and forging through. I love you both.
What has been most surprising about directing The Christians has been how divisive the subject has been. As we began casting the show, I was surprised at the typical questions about scheduling and size of the role were put aside for the almost always first question of, what does the play say about Christians? It became immediately evident that people are very guarded about how faith, religion, spirituality factors into their lives, and were either not interested in or ready for any discussion that may challenge that stance. I grew up in a family, maybe you did too, that followed the mantra, no politics or religion at the dinner table. I didn't question it then, but now that I'm older and our world becomes more and more guarded about its beliefs about anything, I wonder when the right time is to talk about these sensitive topics. It seems the theater offers us one of those safe places. We hope tonight's production gives you a chance to safely consider the idea of faith. Thank you for being a part of the conversation.